All right, welcome everybody. Very excited to be here with Ronnie Landis. Ronnie and I met some time ago. It was a really cool time that we got to spend at that Longevity Now conference.
Mhm,
And just a quick why was I there? I know why you're there,
mhm.
but why was I there? It's because I was getting married and chose not to have a bachelor party, but chose to go to the Longevity Now conference with David Wolf and all those amazing speakers. And that's where we kind of initially connected and hung out a bunch
Mhm.
and had a good time. So, Ronnie, introduce yourself to my crowd may or may not know you so much, but let's talk a little bit about your journey and who you are, and then we'll unpack a ton of that.
Sure, okay. Yeah, well, I was obviously really heavily involved in the raw food community for a long time, for about 10 years. And back in those longevity conference days, those old school days, really where David Wolf was kind of at the peak of the movement and all those amazing events in that world. That was one of the biggest ways that I got introduced to the holistic health movement, the natural foods movement, raw foods, veganism, vegetarianism, all that amazing stuff. And yeah, the way that I got into it about 11 years ago, maybe more now, I had a series of knee injuries that I had accrued through sports and martial arts. I've been a martial artist all my life, trained competitively internationally. I'm trained basketball most of my life competitively as well. So I was really focused on my athletic pursuits, my athletic career, and wanted to go to the Olympics in Taekwondo and was training for that. And I just had a series of knee injuries when I was 18. I had my first knee injury and knee surgery. And then a couple of years later, I had some damage done on my left knee. And then I got a surgery for that and was just in the rehabilitation process. And then I just got turned on to natural foods through YouTube University. And, that's one of the ways that I saw David and his energy, his charisma, his enthusiasm really connected with me, and the information connected with me, and I dove headfirst into that world within 30 days of green vegetable juicing, salads, fruits, nut seeds, sea vegetables, fermented foods, superfood smoothies, and getting barefoot on the ground for 30 days. I actually completely healed my knees. So that's how I got into the field, and I had such a dramatic transformation that it really affected my consciousness, and it affected the way I was thinking. It affected my direction in life, and I decided to change all that energy from my individual pursuits and transfer it over to becoming a professional nutritionist and a public speaker and an author and really an educator. And that's how I got into it. And I decided just kind of, well, not kind of, over time, I decided, as I was experimenting with this lifestyle, I was educating myself about it. I took the information so deep that it just made sense that I would just go out there and speak about this. And that's how I got started. I just started at different potlucks, and I decided I wanted to be an author. I wanted to be a writer, and I was inspired by David and many other people. I said, you know what, I'm gonna be a leader in this community. I'm gonna get into this thing. I'm gonna learn every single thing I can about plant-based nutrition, superfoods, tonic herbalism, herbal systems from all over the world. I'm gonna learn all the different theories on diet and health and bring that forward in a way that makes sense, in a way that's fun, a way that's exciting, a way that's inspiring, because that's what David did. That's what I saw. And so I just kind of took that on for myself, and it's been an amazing journey. It's been an amazing ride, getting to meet all the incredible people like yourself and literally hundreds of other people in this community. And in that particularly, our thing at the time was the living foods community, the raw foods community, the superfood community, the chocolate nightclub community. All that incredible stuff. And it's been about a 10-year journey. I've traveled around the country. I've traveled around the world, doing retreats, giving lectures. I had the honor of being at Catch a Healthy Habit many years ago, and doing an event there. And it's been a blessing. It was the most awesome journey so far. So, and then, you know, all the way up to now, there's been a lot of transitions. We can get into that. But yeah, all that whole 10-year journey, getting to this point now where I feel like I'm just getting started. I feel like the message is integrated. I've had a lot of experience, and now we're just ready for the next chapter.
All right. So I want to backtrack and dig a little bit into that story, because you're talking about a knee injury that kind of drove you this direction. Everybody on Facebook Live right now, everybody who's going to listen to this and wherever we put it out, they got a knee injury, they got a shoulder injury, they got colitis, you know, they got something. Everybody's kind of got something. So you tell me and explain to me how you knew that this way of life, quote unquote, healed the knee and took away the pain, the arthritis, whatever was there. How did you come to the conclusion that the lifestyle was the culprit?
Well, it was just a process of reduction, right? Like I just reduced all the things that I was educating myself on were probable causes. So that was the dairy, that was the meat at the time, that was processed foods, you know, getting off tap water and getting into spring water. It was a process of subtraction by addition, right? I was adding in things and other things were removing themselves. And I did that over enough of a time for the results to be self-evident. It was just obvious. And how that happened was, as I'm running this experiment, right? I'm just going to run an experiment. What would happen if I adopted a raw vegan lifestyle for 30 days, right? Let's see what happens. And then one day when I realized that I was healed, because the thing about healing is that it's progressive, it's incremental, and it's also kind of like a quantum shift when it happens. And what that means is it kind of sneaks up on you. Sometimes you don't notice you're doing something, it's moving you in a positive direction, you get used to it, but then there's a moment. There's a moment where it dawned on me that, like, oh, I'm actually healed. And that moment for me was running 5 miles in the hills, where I had always ran growing up, and that was my reprieve. That was my, you know, running in nature and doing all that. That was my kind of my space. And I hadn't been able to do that for a couple of years because I didn't want to re-injure myself. So I wasn't running. I'd run every day before, every single day. And then I wasn't running for a number of years. So I was hyper aware of that. And my body was aware of that. And so one day I find myself driving to that park, and I go running in the hills 5 miles, and I come back, and it's almost like something possessed me, right? Like something just kind of guided me through. It's like I forgot that I was in pain. That's basically what happened. So when I got back, I realized, like, wait a minute. Like I don't feel any inflammation. I don't feel any pain. And I was jumping up and down trying to feel it out. And then that's when I realized, no inflammation, you know, knees were fine. And I realized, oh, not only did I heal myself, not only am I not in pain, but I forgot that I was in pain to begin with. And that is that sentiment has guided me through every message that I've given in the last 10 years, is that healing is not just the absence of pain. Healing is the absence of the reference in the person's psyche that they were in pain to begin with. Because just like all the people in the world that are dealing with chronic things every day, it creates almost its own identification, right? It's like, oh, I have a bad back. Oh, I have this, I have that, or I have cancer, or I'm a cancer survivor, or I'm in, you know, it's like there is kind of this interesting self-fulfilling prophecy component to physical health, and the mind and the body work very tightly together. And so it was a moment of grace, you know, it was just like one of those moments. I was just like, wow, like I forgot that I was in pain enough to continue my life, because every other day knew I was in pain. I knew I couldn't go running. And it's like I forgot that, and that was kind of the full circle moment.
And How about to the running part? Because, I coach a high school cross country team. Has that kept up for you? Has that been
I can do anything
full?
I want now. I'm 35 years old. I have no aches and pains. Yeah, I'm not as flexible. That's only because I'm not stretching as much as I used to.
Yeah.
There is a logical kind of feedback here, and I think that's what happens with a lot of people too when they get older, is that they just get bogged down by life, right? When we're younger, there's this kind of juvenile youthfulness. So there's like, maybe we don't have as much responsibilities and that kind of thing like we do when we become adults and have families and jobs and mortgages and careers. We don't, I suspect that the human body is really meant to be in a hormonally speaking, it's meant to be in a juvenile state, or at least it's capable of being in a juvenile state throughout the duration of our life. And what juvenile means is it means the point in which a human being, or a point in which a mammal is at their healthiest, is at so that's like when puberty comes on, for example. That's like so we have this thing like juvenile, right? Juvenile delinquents. That's saying there's something. That's when we're most peaked up in hormones. That's when we have most of the rejuvenative factors, the healing factors. We have the most energy. So what I'm saying is that I think there's a couple of different things we could a couple of different things we could point at. But the main thing is to understand that aging is not. Aging doesn't have to be the way that it has been. It doesn't have to be the consensus. In other words, I'm getting older, therefore, oh, this is just normal, and to have these problems, it's not normal. It's not normal, and it certainly doesn't have to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just means that we have to allocate more time to taking care of ourselves, more time to meditating, more time to stretching, more, and just in doing it every day incrementally, 5 minutes here, little stuff we can do to build that into our routine. And then the energy starts coming back on, the body starts opening up. It's like, thank you for taking care of me. I know you got all these million things in your head, but thank you for taking some time out to address the one thing that you have, which is your body.
Right. And part of that, which I know the answer to, but I want you to unpack a little bit more, is your knowledge around food and drink and exercise and earthing and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That has just grown over time. So you've stayed with that. You didn't get better and start running 5 miles and then all of a sudden have a Coke or stop at a fast food place on the way home because now you're feeling better and you can do some of those things that you used to do. Your lifestyle has been completely altered to the point where feeling good has led you down roads that you're going to continue. And you can take a right or left at any time. But to be honest, and this is my feeling too, that right or that left just don't make any sense anymore. Like, that's right. Going to get you lost, right? So why would I go somewhere I'm confident, which I'm going to get lost?
Well said. Yeah, exactly. It's like it doesn't make sense, right? And we do things that don't make sense all the time to varying degrees. And what it really comes down to in my mind is purpose, right? It's what is the direction of my life? Do I have direction in my life? Am I scattered? Am I all over the place? Do I, it's like I really feel like the ultimate secret sauce of success in anything, it really comes down to purpose. And one of the challenges I see is people that get that, they're kind of like, well, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And look, that's an unfolding thing. Like, you don't even know what you are. You don't even know how his body works. You don't even know how a blade of grass works. Why are you trying to figure out the get-go the magnitude of your life, right? We're in other words, we're searching for meaning in our culture right now. I think that's the biggest thing, is there's this search for meaning, because I think there's been some kind of hollow, empty kind of meaninglessness, or people have numbed out. And that's what this does for you. That's what it did for me. It unnumbed me. It activated me. I could feel the blood in my body. I could feel when there's circulation in my physical brain, right? Like I can feel what it feels like to run in contrast to what it felt like to not be able to run. That right there is just broken down into simple terms. Like, this is the interesting thing I've observed in the health world too, in the anti-aging longevity world. Like, shit happens, right? Like, in life, shit happens, if I can say that. Like, things happen. It's not a straight line. It's all squiggly, and it's all. So to me, health is actually about performance. That's why my brand, the evolving brand that I'm gonna really be focusing on, is called High Performance Health. But that's not like athletic or entrepreneur performance. That's life. Having the ability to perform at any task with full capability to meet that moment and not be exhausted by it, but maybe even to be energized by it. I mean, to be able to feel that when someone didn't feel that, and then they get a glimmer, they get kind of the mountaintop vision. It's like, to me, at least for me, that was like, I got my life back. I got my dream back. That was what it was for me. So when I healed, there was no thought. There was no thought of like, let me go screw this up. Right. Let me just go throw a bunch of paint on this wall I just finally got together. Right. It was just like I was on a track and I got back on track. I was off track, struggling, and then I got back on track. I was like, oh, it was kind of natural. It's just like, oh, this feels good. I'm going back. So for some people, you know, interpret that or translate that however it makes sense to you in your life. But one of the great blessings in life and in health, I find, or at least one of the lessons, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is that sometimes you have to lose your health in order to appreciate it, right? Isn't that true in life? Sometimes we have to lose things in order to appreciate. That happens all the time in people's relationships. I know it's happened to me before. And our health is the same way. But the thing about the body is that it's this miraculous, intelligent thing that knows how to heal itself. Does the food heal us? Or is it the body healing itself when we give it the supportive? When we get rid of the junk first, right? That I'm clear about that. No matter what superfood or that, I've done all that. Like, I know for a fact, the most powerful thing someone can do is remove the problems that are causing the things that are causing the problems, and then from there, it's just kind of like this experimental thing. You're experimenting with different diets, you're experimenting with different foods, and that kind of thing. But the cleansing and the detoxification process is important. That's why I tell people, when you're coming off a particular type of lifestyle, you got to go through some kind of transition phase. You got to go through some kind of cleansing, detoxification, because you don't want to just go from here to here. It's not going to work. There's an acclimation process. And I think that's the challenge for most people, right? Because there is a mental and emotional aspect of all this too. You're literally shifting from who you used to be. So, you know, don't think that this isn't going to transform you, right? And that's the great thing about the raw food lifestyle, is that it kind of pits you up against yourself, right? It shows you where things went awry. But it also gives you this energy and this kind of like life force that helps you just get through those moments. But I really recommend people try not to focus so much on the diet being the thing. We always remember that the divine gift is this. This is the thing, the food and all the theories around food, like all that is just, it's a choose your own adventure story at this point. I've seen everyone from every different dietary camp thrive and not thrive. And I'm just like, what is that? Because that dawned on me years into this, because when I don't know, I'm going on a tangent here, so feel free to.
No, you're good. Yeah.
Okay. Just a train of thought here. Years into the raw food world, I began to suspect that there was something very strange around certain people, or just certain energies in the messaging of it. And I had to kind of like figure what that was. I had to figure that out. And what I figured out is that there's a lot of people that have ideas about ideas, but it doesn't always, it's not like a scientifically conclusive, like, oh yeah, this is everyone who does this is what it is. I saw a lot of random examples of health and people that were purporting to have the best diet, but weren't really representative of that, whether it was physically or mentally, like, you know, a lot of people with like emotional issues. I mean, we all know that in the vegan world, it's a lot of identity politics that gets played into it. Not to harp on that, but I'll conclude with this. What I'm getting at is that the energy is external, right? It's like, let me get this thing to patch me up, this thing out here. I'm going to put my power into this thing, which usually has a community wrapped around it too. So there's kind of this tribal kind of echo chamber where we can get caught up into, and then that becomes everything that we're hearing, unless we're getting multiple perspectives. And so just the last thought, just to tie this together, hope I'm not going all over the place, but just to tie this together on that train of thought, one of the biggest challenges for me was to recognize and admit to myself that there were a lot of people eating meat that actually were really healthy, right? I was like, they're telling me that this is like, you know, the Tamazic diet, like Ayurveda, like this is like your nadis are going to get blocked up. I'm like, okay, like I get that, but like there's a lot of people that are actually thriving and they're healthy and they're calm and balanced and relatively helpful people. And then I saw a lot of people over here where it was like kind of just a mixed bag. So that was a very interesting thing for me to observe in the various diet communities. And I think I bring that up because I want to help people avoid the booby trap standing between them and their health, between them and the felt experience of feeling good. Because when you feel good, you do good. And that's, I'll tie a bow on that.
Okay. Let's, I want to unpack that in just a second, but I want to backtrack again. When you were just beginning your experiment in the, in the raw food world,
Yeah.
you've already mentioned David Wolfe, but point some of the listeners and watchers to some other supportive information via books, speakers, things like that. Because 10 years ago, this social media thing wasn't what it is now. So me and you, we had to do a little bit more, research.
Oh, dude, I could go. I mean, we could go back in time. I mean, I studied the raw food thing since its inception, and like the Gerson Institute and Wigmore from the original Hippocrates. Then Dr. Brian Clement took it over, and they worked together, and he took over the Hippocrates Center. Obviously, I studied his work pretty closely. Dr. Gabriel Cousins. I've interviewed Brian once. I've interviewed David 4 times. I've interviewed Gabriel Cousins 4 times. He did an endorsement for one of my books. I mean, it's something, Victoris Kulsvinskis. I mean, and the rest of the cast of characters and more of the modern iteration of the raw food world. Like I've been deep in it. I'm like, I'm very good friends with many people, and David being one of those. So yeah, it is interesting. And one of the things, since you brought that up, I have to mention one of the ways that I not that I'm not involved in it. I love this community. It's just not what it was. And I had to come to terms with that, because there was a heyday where it was at the peak of like excitement. And it felt like that was all that was happening in the world, right? Like these events, the Raw Spirit Fest and the longevity conferences, and everyone's getting together, and it's like, I mean, even now, like I'm sad that that's not still in effect. But it was an era, and I had to realize that one day. I was like, damn, man, like that movement's moved on. I thought I was carrying it. There was a strong weight on me to carry it, until I realized I was like, that's just not me anymore. Like that's just not actually. And that was a tough pill to swallow. To realize, like, damn, those days, really, they're not, everyone's growing up, my friends are having babies, and I'm on that trajectory myself. And it's like, oh, we were just like kids. Like, we were really stoked adult children. And it gave, I think, I see you smiling. I think there was that, I mean, that's why I'll never talk bad about any of it. I don't have any reason to. Like, those are some of the best days of my life. And that brought us to where we are.
So let's transition a little bit. Well, before we transition, let's talk about the book that you wrote, the title of it, and the heart and soul that went into that.
Okay. Well, I'll try to keep this short. I have two books officially. I've written 7, and then eventually just compiled them into 2 books. The book that you're aware of, The Live It Lifestyle, Dropping Diets Forever. That's what I had when I did that event at your place. And I later adapted that. Well, I basically turned that whole book into another book now called the Holistic Health Mastery Program. It's a 500-page book, and it's like pretty much the foundation of everything that I come from. And I brought in all those people that I mentioned, many, many more, just bringing in all that wisdom into that one book. I feel like that's the foundation and tome of everything in that last 10-year journey. And then my other book is the Inner Alchemy Youthening Program, which is kind of like I was inspired by Eating for Beauty. And I thought, man, there's something about that really resonates with me. Not to talk about beauty so much, but there's some kind of energy in that book that really resonated with me. So that inspired me to ultimately create this other book, which is a completely different thing, but it has kind of this certain energy, kind of this I don't know, I can't put my finger on it, but it's not like a normal nutrition book. It's kind of like a metaphysical, spiritual kind of development book, which is focused on health and nutrition and cleansing, and there's a strong focus on alchemy. So it kind of brings in kind of this more of a magical component, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. There was more of a, you read David's books, they always have some kind of magical connotation in them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Awesome. All right. Where are we now? How and why did you get there? And obviously you look great. So you must be feeling great. So talk us through the latest transition.
Yeah. Okay. So the latest transition is 5 months ago or so, I decided to reincorporate animal products, particularly meat and organ meats, and things of that nature. That was not a small decision and not a small thing, but ultimately what happened was my body and my heart all told me at the same time that this is what I need to do. I can't explain how that happened. I can't give you some kind of like rational explanation. Some people may not understand that, but that's what happened to me. And so I meditated on it, and it just felt right. My body was just like, it's time. Like, it's time to make this shift. So I did that, and just started, again, run an experiment. I was like, let's take that same theme that started us on this path. Let's run an experiment. Let's find out what's my body trying to tell me. So long story short, I started researching different things around. I had been aware, I've studied all this, Daniel Vitalis and many other people. I've studied all this kind of stuff. So I kind of already I wasn't confused. I was like, okay, I know what to do. I just never wanted to do that before. So then I just started looking, okay, we need to look into what is the highest quality meat. Let's educate ourselves on meat a little bit more. What do I need to do? Food combining, all that kind of stuff. And I stumbled on something called the Carnivore Diet, which made no sense to me, by the way, in the beginning. Like, I was like, okay, this is just some other thing. But the more I studied it, and more so I heard people's experience. Glenn, this is very important. I have to get this across to people. Just listen to people. This is the biggest issue in our world, right? Like, you go on YouTube and it's just like everybody's making videos about people. And I never understood that. I was like, what? It's a peace and love diet, right? But why is everyone like trying to throw bananas at each other? So I was just like, I'm just going to listen to people. What do I know? I don't know anything. Clearly, I'm just going to listen to people tell me their story. And that's what I did. And I had a number of friends who went carnivore, and they were just like, dude, I'm feeling amazing. And I was like, I had to reconcile with it, because it was like, what am I going to do? Argue? Yeah. Oh no, but you need your fiber and whatever. Like, it's like, you can get all your protein, your amino acids from this. And I was like, okay, I guess I just have to sit with this. And so I did. And long story short, that happened for me. And it's been about 5 months that I've been doing that. And I got to tell you, I mean, I could talk for hours about it, but I do feel amazing. I feel incredible. Not to say that I didn't feel great before. It's a different octave, if that makes sense. It's a different tint. It's a different tone. Like in music, you have different octaves and tones, and it could be the same thing, like feeling great, but it's a different tone. That's how I feel, you know. And there's plenty of information packed in there, but I feel like I've come full circle is what it is. Even just as a man, just as a young man, going through that whole world and navigating through it and just having the best time ever, I feel like I'm actually much more grounded in reality. That's a huge thing, and that's a thing to unpack probably at a different time, but I feel more grounded in reality. I felt like there was a lot of esoteric energy. There was a lot of like projecting, whether it's like, oh, we're going to save the animals, but what animals are you talking about? Are you saving, or is that just an idea you have way out there that's not relevant to one's own personal life? You know, people making YouTube videos and stuff and telling people the way they should live, but they're not necessarily living that way. They're living in front of a computer, right? Eating whatever vegan foods, maybe processed foods that are not good for the environment or animal welfare. Here's what happened, Cliff. The vegan goggles fell off. And all of a sudden, I'm telling you, dude, it was like this, like, oh, whoa, like I just could see, it's like doing a psychedelic or something. I actually had a shamanic experience with a piece of steak. I literally felt the animal coursing through my blood, and it was a good thing. There was no pain or suffering. These are healthy animals. I felt this like indigenous thing kick on. I was like, oh, I feel like me again. That's the best way I can distill my experience. I felt me again. There was some kind of emptiness there that and this can happen with excessive detoxification, right? I see so many people we both know, I'm sure, looked up to. I see them after, that's the thing about being in a movement for at least 10 years, right? You see the journey a little bit better. And that's kind of what happened to me. And I did that.
So obviously you mentioned it before that you did your research before you got into, you know.
Yeah. Well, that was, yeah, just on that note, like that was a big process for me just as a nutritionist, because when I got into this, if you haven't noticed, I never branded myself Raw Vegan Ronnie or any of that stuff. I was really more like, I'm a nutritionist. I'm a health professional. So I need to be about people's health. And so I had to study. I actually wanted to, at one point, I wanted to find out every single argument against veganism. Probably so I could be prepared and, you know, for conversations, debates and stuff. And that's how I got my education on the other side of it. That's how I learned about Weston A. Price, you know, physical health and degeneration. And I learned about more of the Aboriginal tribes and the blue zones. And I just studied alternate information, right? And so I had all that in regenerative farming, obviously, with David as a friend and mentor. I got deep into Rudolf Steiner's work, still am. I think it's the most relevant thing going on in the world right now, in biodynamic farming. And here's the other thing, I spent time on farms. I would go to Hawaii and I lived on a permaculture farm for 4 months. I was giving lectures there and I learned a lot about what happens. Like, it's not a veganic operation. Like, there are certain things that, you know, there's certain processes to you know, conscious farming, not industrial farming, but conscious farming. And there's this thing called animal husbandry, which is something that we've always had relationships with animals, right? I think that possibly the vegan community to a large extent is trying to cut that out because they think like, oh, that's how we're going to save the animals, but it's really not, right? Like, it's actually, we have to be connected to the animals. We have to work with the animals. There's a relationship there, no matter how you try to see it. And that's what I realized. So all that was there, is what I'm trying to say. It was all there. And then when all that had to happen was I had to make the shift here. to have all that come through. Because, you know, when you're really focused on something or you want to prove something, we can develop a cognitive dissonance and push away or block out other information or perspectives that don't confirm with our bias. Once that bias was gone, it was like, oh, okay, I know exactly what to do.
Mm-hmm. And so in your research, you started to understand, all right, I'm going to do this. Now, what are my healthiest options for this meat? Or did you settle on certain animals? Were eggs part of the deal? And obviously, I know the answer to this question, but
Yeah.
the source must have been really, really meaningful to know where these animals were coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be real with you. In the beginning, it was just about the body. And that was important. I had to be in that place where this is 100% about health, right? Because I was highly influenced by those other things. So I was like, this is 100% about you and your health and your body and feeling something. None of this other stuff. Like, this thing needs to check out, and we need to get completely into feeling the body. So yeah, obviously grass-fed, grass-finished, little bit of raw dairy. But again, like I was already really aware of that kind of stuff. So it wasn't a learning curve, I guess. It wasn't like this big meditation. It was a progressive thing. So as I went to the store and I got the absolute best quality, or talk to the people, just get basic information. But after that, I just wanted to just run the experiment. And then I started to feel something. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Because it wasn't like, oh, this is what I'm going to do now. It was like, I'm just running an experiment. And part of me was hoping it didn't work. Right? That's a deep one right there. And when I had the first grass-fed, grass-finished steak, I was like, this is what happened. I take a few bites, I'm eating it, and it was almost like someone passed me mushrooms or something. It was like, I don't know how deep you've been into that, but I've been very deep into all that stuff. So I talk more about it too. So it was like an onset. It was like I literally had blood rushing through my arm all up into it was like a niacin flush almost. And I'm like, my brain is like, and I was like, oh man. And that was the moment. It was a kind of an oh shit moment, because I was like, oh man, this actually works. It was actually like, this actually is unequivocally working.
And where have you kind of fallen into as a daily kind of lifestyle? Are you working, the animal protein in daily? Is it a meal here, a meal there? And where is the raw food? Are you still doing the salads? And I'm sure you're still working off organic produce and things like that.
It's a great question. The answer will surprise you and many people. At this current point, I have not had a salad in about 5 months. Not because I didn't want to, simply because I wasn't attracted to it. It just kind of like, after having the dense nourishment from the animal foods, my body's kind of like, we don't really care for it. It's really interesting. But what I equate that to is that there's anabolism and catabolism in the natural biological cycle. So you have times in your life where you're anabolic, or moments in your day where you're anabolic, and then you have catabolic. So catabolism is really detoxification and cleansing. And that's why we need to bring both of these together, because you have an entire community that's really kind of hyper focused on cleansing. It's like, okay, I got to do another 15-day water fast because, I got some negative thinking. So obviously that means I need to water fast. So it's like there's a lot of that energy, right? Where in my mind, what I really believe the raw food lifestyle was and is it's really about that fundamentally, right? That's most of the information that we get from that world, isn't it? It's cleansing, detoxification, purification, enemas, parasite cleanses. And then there's this other aspect, which is rebuilding, energy production, sustainable blood sugar, sustainable energy, and supporting the body in its anabolic process. And that's really what longevity comes down to from a hormone perspective. Like, if you're a man and your testosterone is low, you're actually a better case for prostate cancer, right? And also low willpower, insecure feelings or thoughts or frenetic energy. I had all this, by the way. I'm just telling you my experience. I had all this stuff going on at different points in the journey, but because I was so hyper personal development focused, I thought it was just my mind. I thought it was just runaway emotions, or like, there's a divine feminine rising. I got into this relationship. It like spun me out. And I realized I just didn't have the ability to hold the charge. This is really important. Your body is like a battery. Every one of your cells is an electrical battery, positive and negative, alkalinity, acidity. It's a battery, right? So what are the symptoms of the battery starting to lose its charge? Scattered energy, emotional overwhelm, psychological overwhelm, scatteredness. That I realized, like, oh, God, it was my body all the way. It was my body the whole time. Every time I tried to focus on, the mind and the mind and the mind, it was like, oh, well, this sucks. I'm in my head all day. This not fun. I'm in my emotions all the time. I'm like, okay, I need to process and need to heal. And that's all valid. But the missing component was that one thing. I didn't have the capacity to hold the energy that was coming through in my life. And the meat really helped. It's like an insulator, right? So it's like the fat in particular is the insulation material that holds the electrical charge. Just like in your nervous system, your central nervous system is running so much energy all the time. There's something called the myelin sheath, which is the fatty tissue that wraps around the nerves and keeps the conductivity going. Right. And you might be able to see this. I'm just alluding to what a lot of people, the displays and symptoms of the body over alkalizing or over cleansing, but now it doesn't have the raw materials to actually hold that much energy. That does happen on those things. And so sometimes people swing, they yo-yo, right? Oh, it didn't work. Or the healing of the shock zone, the Hertzheimer syndrome, they cleanse too quick. And it's like, there's like too much going, they can't handle it, right? It's too fast.
So then let's get back to some of the things that were.
You're going to get a lot more out of me with every question you ask.
No, we're good. This is great. This is great. So we're back in that 10 years of the raw food living, and then now we're in this certain amount of months. Let
me just complete that thought for you.
Okay.
So what I'm doing. So yes, I've been doing this experiment. I'm eating predominant as far as food. So let's break this down. This is one of the things I've always done in my work is I have a hierarchy or a certain food pyramid, if you will, and food and liquids and elemental supplements and elemental supplementation, meaning from nature, that's all built into it. And then water is all built into it. So the way that I look at food is just solid food, whether that's plant-based or that's animal-based or both. That's just food. That's just like what you need to maintain and all that kind of thing. Then from there, you start migrating into more liquids. So then it becomes like, maybe it's that superfood protein smoothie you had, right? And then from there, it thins out a little bit more. And then it's like green vegetable juices, teas, infusions, or that kind of thing, right? Just it's more concentrated nutrition in an easier to absorb form. And then you have your spring water. And then really the thing that I think is actually the most powerful is the elemental nutrition, which is the sun, the earth, water. We talked about that. And then air. And by the way, when you have that ability to hold that charge, sun gazing and sun exposure becomes not an issue. I can tell you for sure, and I know this theory. I'm unraveling this theory with you. By the way, I haven't worked this out. I'm just unraveling it with you. People have a lot of challenges with absorbing the sun, or they're afraid of the sun, or whatever. They can't hold the charge, and so when you have the foundation together, it actually allows you to take the UV rays and to charge yourself up without getting sunburnt, without getting any of these things that people are afraid of. And that's basically, so that in a nutshell is kind of what I do. I kind of go about that kind of basic program. So the solid food for the most part is animal foods, and that's what I'm attracted to right now, because I'm rebuilding my body after 10 years of not doing that. There is a rehabilitation process. 5 months now, I feel great. I feel really, really solid. And then I still do smoothies here and there, juices, green shakes, trying to kind of bring a little more balance into it. But my main priorities are always water. Water has always been my top priority. Biggest issue in society is tap water consciousness. So overcoming that through educating ourselves on water, particularly spring water, right? I don't need to tell you about that. Yeah. And getting all those components together. That's my lifestyle, right? That's what I do. I'm trying to get in everything I can that I can take in. And food has just kind of become this thing where, like, I don't have to really think about food. It's like, oh, okay, maybe I should eat something, boom, sit down, do a prayer, do the whole thing, and then I'm back.
Let's unpack water, because like you mentioned, it's one of my favorite topics. And you mentioned spring water. So some people listening or watching may be thinking, Poland spring water, I drink that. Let's kind of take the veil off of water, as far as it being able to actually help hold the charge, create the charge, nourish the body, because most water people have access to doesn't do any of that.
It probably doesn't do anything, actually. It's a weird situation to think about. We're water-based beings, though, aren't we? We're water-based beings. We're electrical beings as well. So we know that water creates conductivity, right? That's just basic science. We know that. When you talk about the different types of water, I mean, that's a whole thing in of itself. I'll just try to simplify my perspective, is that anything coming out of a tap is no bueno to me. You can put the filter on it, you can put the distiller on it, the RO machine, the alkalizer, whatever you want to do. And I suggest people do that where they are. But for me, that's not an option, because I know the truth for me. So I can't unknow that. I know what's going through those systems, those municipalities, and the recycling of the toilet water. If you study all the contaminants, 77,000 possible contaminants in the water supply, given wherever it is, a huge amount of that is pharmaceutical runoff and runoff from street drugs and all the, God knows whatever else is in that system. And so when it's going through the piping system, I mean, there's things on there with Viktor Schauberger and, certain things I don't want to go into, but that's a good person to study. Viktor Schauberger, he is the seminal expert over the last 100-something years on water. So a lot of that wisdom comes from him. But the point I'll make is that the reason I'm so fanatical about spring water is because you can't replicate what is happening with spring water in a machine. It has something imbued in it, a type of energy and a type of signature. And I know this because I've been to 10s, 20s, 30s of different springs around the world. Each one is different. Each one is different. Some are sweeter, some are not. Some have, you feel more of a charge, some whatever, like it's all different. So that told me this water has a personality, and its personality is reflective of the environment that it's incubating in. So in other words, the most direct way to get connected to your ecosystem is to drink the water that comes from it. A few distinctions too. Spring water is not river water. You're not going to get giardia or some deer pooped in the water, some crazy thing. That's what people think. It's literally spring water. In a spring, the water that comes out of it has never ever seen the outer atmosphere before. That water that's coming out of a spring is literally, it's like the embryonic substance, fluid of that entire ecosystem. That's why it's so special. It's never been manipulated. It's never been Obviously, like doing any kind of contamination, possible contamination in that area. I'm not saying just go to any river, or not a river, but any mountain, just drink what comes out. There's a website called findaspring.com, which you know very well. And that gives people the opportunity to find local springs that have been vetted. And I mean, this thing's going all over the world. So there's people all over the world who have put pipes, and there's certain cities have pipes built into it because they're like monuments. They knew about this. This isn't some new thing. You know, some springs have been preserved, just like in Sedona, Arizona. When I was living there, they have a situation like that. You can just drive up and fill up your water, and the town does. There's so many different things. Obviously, we can riff and raff about water, but that's the one thing I'm non-negotiable about. I'm a lot less finicky about food now, because I know the water is the one thing I've gone without water just so I didn't have to compromise that. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, it is super, super powerful stuff. And again, findaspring.com. We got to give props to Daniel Vitalis on that as well.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Daniel kind of created that whole baby, and it's blown up, and it's an awesome website.
Yeah, and by the way, on that note, my friend Chris Sanborn, who owns a company called livespringwater.com, they bought that from Daniel, and now they're running that site. So one of my best friends actually runs that site, and he owns a company, livespringwater.com. They deliver in these glass Flower of Life sacred geometry glasses. You might have seen them on social media or something.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend going to livespringwater.com. They don't deliver everywhere, but they might deliver in your area. They definitely deliver those bottles. And I've been surprised. There's a lot of companies that are now hip to this and are now creating delivery services. Like here in Austin, there's a place 3 hours away. It's called Crazy Water. And it's the best water I've tasted in so long. And I was like, do you guys deliver? They're like, yeah, we'll send you as much as you want. So that's exciting. There's a lot of that opening up.
Yeah. Oh, cool. All right. So we got it that you were super grounded, and this newer way of life is really kind of balanced you out a little bit. I want to talk about what is on your eyes and your glasses. I know what they are. I want you to, now, obviously, when this gets to podcast, people aren't going to see this, but do your best to explain those, and let's dig into that as a little bit of a talking topic, why you're wearing them, and some stuff beyond that.
Yeah, well, other than the fact that it makes me look highly intelligent, they're blue blocking glasses. So they're by a company called True Dark. There's a few others. I have this other one too. So these are just kind of like middle of the way. Then this one, that's like nighttime. That's like you're going in and like writing. I'm writing all night. That's like I'm going like tonight. I'm going all night tonight, just on my jam. I'm just going all night here, and that's where these would come in, right? And why wear them? Well, in this virtual simulation that we're in right now, we're interacting and engaging and interfacing on these devices, and we don't realize how it's affecting our eyes, the optic nerves in our eyes connecting to the brain, how it affects our nervous system, and how it kind of keeps the body system in this kind of engaged sympathetic state, right? That's just one aspect of it. These help soothe my eyes. When I'm looking at the screen, they're tinted in a certain way, so I don't get all these I don't know how to say it, but all this stuff hitting my eyes all at once. It soothes my eyes. It keeps me relaxed. And then the other reason is because, especially at night, we want to avoid these shiny lights, and that's not always possible or convenient. So I just wear it at night because it allows my brain to produce natural melatonin, which is obviously what you need to sleep, and also serotonin as well. And when I'm doing this and I'm stuck here in front of the screen, it actually blocks my melatonin production, which, by the way, will have effects on your serotonin production, which people can track. Like, you can just look at our culture right now. It's like, this is everything, right? Like, this is the difference between you having a good and bad day. well, let me go on Facebook now and just let me roll the dice. You know, I mean, that's a whole riff and rant in of itself. But while I'm playing that game, when I do this, for some reason, it just makes me feel a little more calm and balanced. So
Yeah, awesome. And let's I want to get into a little bit of the topic of today and
absolutely,
where
please.
we've been and why we've been there and all that stuff. But I want you to, you mentioned it much earlier in the discussion, but I want you to touch on grounding, being barefoot on the earth, and some of the reasons
Mm.
around that and why you do that so much.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one part of it is I just like being connected to the earth. It just feels natural for me not to wear shoes. I mean, when I do public speaking, I'm at an event or something, I'm always barefoot. It's almost always on stage. I'm barefoot just because I like to be barefoot now, right? And that came from earthing. It came from grounding, getting barefoot on grass, getting barefoot on the sand, getting barefoot on soil, all that kind of thing. And I mean, that's a whole body of research. That's actually one of the things that I decided to study early on. When I got into raw food, it was three things. I got into raw food. I got into a book called Born to Run by Christopher McDougall, which was all about barefoot running. And then I got into a book called Earthing by Clint Ober and Steven Sinatra and one other guy. And that was about the science of how the earth produces electrical charges, produces negative ions that plug into the receptors of our body. So our foot has multiple, it has probably the most, I think it has the most amount of receptors to the rest of the body, the K1, K2 point for the kidneys, all that. And they did an extensive amount of studying and research over the course of years. And what they basically found was that inflammation is heavily caused by disconnection to earth. Disconnection to, and however you want to take that, disconnection to our mother, to our earth. I've actually found it's actually all, it's all true. Like all that's actually true. And it's all part of the same picture, right? So I like to be connected to Mother Earth. It makes me feel more natural, natural human. There's a plethora of scientific research now validating pretty much everything about it. It helps put you more in a right hemisphere state of mind than the left hemisphere. So it de-stresses you. It can make you more creative. We know this, right? Like getting into nature is a highly creative endeavor, right? But when we're stressed and we're in that stress zone and we're living in these little boxes all the time, then we kind of resist that. But we know deep down, like that's the ticket, like that's the right thing. And that's why we have all these camping trips and all these vacations and everything, because intrinsically people know I'm supposed to be in nature. I'm supposed to be connected to the earth right now. So, you know, that's a little bit on that.
Yeah, and being connected to the earth, being in the sunshine and drinking the water that
Yeah, yeah,
comes
yeah,
up through
yeah.
the earth.
Mhm.
I mean, if you've got those three things covered, chances are pretty good health isn't far behind.
Totally. And that's what you find in all those blue zones, right? People are always obsessing, like, what was the diet? What was the magical thing they ate, right? Like, well, it's all dependent on survival mostly, and it's what they had available to them, and they didn't have 50 different superfoods, and they didn't have everything that we have, and yet a lot of us still struggling just to keep our head above water in our society. So that must mean, oh, it's not all about that, is it? Then that brings in like environment. How is my environment affecting my genetics? How is it affecting my state of being and my physical health? Seems like that probably plays a huge part in it. And then the other part is relationships. That's what they discovered in all those studies. The longest living people in the world, the commonality, yeah, there was like high glacial spring water, and there was eating naturally in their habitat where they had available. But then there was this relationship component. And there's a science called social genomics. So like epigenetics, social genomics. It's how our genes are affected by our social relationships. And so they had tight knit relationships, right?
Yeah,
So
totally. And
all those things put together.
right. So Now let's kind of fast forward. We can go back in time a little bit, but you're in Austin, Texas,
Yep.
and since I'll say maybe late February through mid-March, things started getting a little weird.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
Right.
and then really by the third weekend in March, fourth weekend in March, late March,
March
things
3rd.
got really out of control. So
Yeah.
my quick 2 cents on this is, again, and I'll blame this on the raw food and the cleansing. It just kind of opened up a lot of consciousness here for me to see things differently. And I know if this happened back when I was 28 or 30, I would be doing all the things that a lot of the people are doing today as far as following the rules and doing what you're told. But I feel like I see so clearly through this that it bothers me a little bit that others don't. So that's my little 2 cents. Talk to me about like how you are viewing what is going on today. We don't have to talk about COVID or
We know
the
we know
disease.
the miles, so we know the reference of the points of reference, right?
Right.
Yeah. That, I mean, that's a great way to enter. So I feel like the 10 years of cleansing and doing the plant-based journey prepared me for this moment, this mission. Everything that I've done before, all the different businesses and all the speaking and all the stuff, it all prepared me for this moment right here. And that's how I feel. So that's actually interesting, because before the COVID thing hit, that's when this thing started kicking on. It was almost like it was like it was like an animal with their head to the ground, and they could sense something coming, and then they'll migrate away, right? Like this is an instinctual thing. Like I had an instinct that kicked on, like, oh whoa, California, something is something's brewing, and it doesn't feel like it's in my head. It feels like there's something happening. So that's when the introducing the meat came in, and it grounded me, and it actually, now that is what's allowing me to now power through. So that's just interesting to think about that from that perspective. But yeah, what's going on? I mean, I feel like I've become like a private detective on the internet as a part-time job, which oftentimes overlaps into an entire day sometimes, which now I'm like working to put boundaries around. But it's so fascinating. The whole thing is just so fascinating. I mean, at what level, it just depends on what level you want to look at it. The political level is so fascinating to me. The whole timeline, the storyline, and then you have this whole thing with Ghislaine Maxwell, and then the Jeffrey Epstein emergence, and then you find out, depending on how far down the rabbit holes you go, you find out about the level of criminality and corruption and just full-blown evil that is like running amok. And it's like, I always sensed this, I always knew this, but it was like, oh, that I had an idea of like, oh, criminals and stuff. Like I knew the banker, like I've known most of this. You can't not know it when you get into these fields, these health fields. But it's just like, it's so full blown. It's so full blown and obvious, and the pieces are being put together by incredible researchers all around the world. And for the first time in human history, we have access to everything, like everything that was pushed underneath the radar, suppressed, blackmailed. The swelling of all that is come to the point where now it's popping and it's overflowing, and people don't really know what to do with it. And I get that. And I'm just navigating this too. But obviously I don't buy into anything. I never, I don't buy into any of the consensus story. I know levels and levels and levels deeper, which we can't go into detail right now. But with the COVID-19 situation, the vaccine agenda, and then spiraling it all the way to the whole racial divide, and all the controversy, and all the, not really controversy, but the corruption behind the Black Lives Movement, and how that's all kind of spawning out. So I think what's happening just to put this together, I think what's happening is that we're seeing multi-dimensional revolutions. It's not just one thing. Like back in the day, we didn't have access like we did. It was like, okay, it's the Vietnam War, or it's this thing, or it's that thing. Now it's like everything. You have the civil rights movement popping up. You have the Great Depression coming up. You have the swine flu of 1919 coming up, right? It's like everything in our all the karma of our world is now rising to the surface in a time where we actually can do something about it, where we actually as individuals have the power of perception and the power to choose. You know what? Like, I'm not really vibing with the media. I'm going to create my own media. I'm going to watch alternative media. I'm going to see what other people see. You want to censor and cancel people? I'm going to go check out what other people are talking about. You can create your own media, right? You can choose your own media and information, and then you can choose what to do with it. And I think that's the point we're all at right now, right? After like 5 months of this whole circus and charade, it's like, obviously it's all leading up to the election. I mean, that if people don't understand that, like, that's the thing. When you say you get irritated, that's the thing in me that's just like, have we gone so smart we became stupid? Like, is that where we're at? Because I don't know how anyone doesn't understand unless you don't study history, right? Unless you don't see the patterns. It's like, it's obviously all leading to that. But people have, like, obviously they have their belief systems and agitations, whether it's around Donald Trump or it's this or that. And so and people's beliefs and their biases and their traumas, really, they get in the way of being able to see clearly. And what you're explaining, the frustration you're explaining, is the frustration that all of us feel on this side of the fence. Trust me. It's like, but it's the vegan goggle thing, right? It's the same analogy. It's like, you got the goggles on, that's really all you can see, and it hyper magnifies whatever you're looking at too. So once those things drop, all that's left is clarity. It's like, oh my God, it just is what it is, right? And I feel that's probably how you feel. I'm curious what you have to say about that. But
yeah, I mean, there were other events that happened previously to this that I'll tell you when it all started for me. I was, kind of doing this cleansing thing, doing this raw food thing, and actually loving life.
yeah.
I was on a retreat with David Wolf. It was in Maui.
Oh, in Maui. Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
in this part of the retreat, at the end of the night, David, everybody gathers around, and there's only 20 of us. He talks and talks and talks about this and 1,000 things he's talking about. People call it a night when they call it a night. David doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So I'm the only one standing. Right? So I'm the only one standing. He goes, and the topic he was talking about was way over my head. And I said, I need more. We can't just end. He goes, all right, come on. So we went back to his cabin there, and he put in a DVD, and it was all about the moon landing.
Oh, he moon landed you.
And I'm like thinking,
I've been there.
What do you mean we landed on the moon? Where's the confusion around that, right?
Yeah.
And then we watch it. It's literally 3:30 in the morning. We watch about 10 minutes of it, and now I'm starting to doze because I wasn't connected to the anti-moon landing mindset. But he gives me the DVD, and I watch it soon after that. And then, man, that was unbelievable. And then everything circled back to 9/11. And then I always wasn't feeling awesome about that when it happened. Something felt off, and then bam, all the stuff that was available, from Loose Change to all these amazing documentaries, videos, interviews. It just, my mind literally blew. I had to kind of go into hibernation to take all this stuff in. And then I came out in a big way. I came out in a big way, showing Loose Change. Actually, I put this out there, this Loose Change thing out there, kind of before the internet was kind of crazy. Maybe it was 2003 when that came out. And literally 90 people showed up to this arts festival kind of space that we had, and we watched it. The energy in the room, I was going to have a conversation after watching that movie, but the energy in the room caused me to say, people, thank you all for coming. I will talk to you all in the future about this topic, but for right now, I'm not really feeling comfortable taking this conversation any further. Let's go all sleep on it and go from there. But it was kind of deep stuff, right? So not really to unpack that now. Now we come to COVID, and I just have no understanding why healthy people are wearing masks. That's one. No understanding social distancing, how that works. And I just have no understanding how a test that isn't meant to be a diagnostic test is all of a sudden diagnosing millions on top of millions of people for this disease. So there's where my kind of hot button points, and Big Tree, and there's a bunch of places to watch, but there is censorship now. So a lot of this stuff is, I lost the interview I did with Matthew Grace, which was all about COVID. After 1,000 and 1,100 viewers, it disappeared. So it's weird out there. So that's my 2 cents. I want to hear a little bit from you, and then we're going to wrap up.
Okay. Well, yeah, you got a few different things going on here. What you're explaining is just the logical fallacies, right? Like wearing a face mask, social distancing. That doesn't do anything. It's been proven time and time again. How many scientists and doctors and nurses on the front lines and people that are highly intelligent and have nothing to gain by disseminating this information, right? It makes no sense. The face mask thing, I don't even know. I can't even talk about it anymore because I already hammered that thing so much on social media. And to keep talking about it seems so ludicrous to me that if people haven't gotten that, they haven't gotten that piece yet, then somebody else is going to have to wake them up. I'm going this way. If you want to come with this, let's go this way. There's no face mask allowed either. Obviously the deoxygenation, that's proven. Big Tree proved that unequivocally. No matter what you're putting around you, any kind of mask, any kind of putting a shirt over you or a bandana over you, it significantly reduces oxygen in children. Fact. You have cotton masks. What's the number one insecticide that's used on conventional cotton? It's glyphosate. Well, that's great. That sounds like a great idea. Let's just put that up here to our mouth and our nose and just breathe that in. And not to mention that it can get moldy and it's probably a petri dish at that point of other organisms, right? So there's that. But really what's going on here, people are, here's how I want to say it.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah, here's how I want to say it. It's all just the representation of the conditioning of our culture. That's really what it is, because people know this doesn't make any sense. When you talk to people, they're like, "Hey, how you doing? How can you breathe in there?" They're like, "Man, it's hard." I'm like, "Well, shit, man. Like, what's going on here? Then what are we doing? I'm not wearing the mask if I absolutely have to, but it's like, what inside of you has got that thing that clearly is hard to breathe in? What's got you doing that?" Well, there's social approval. There's this whole idea of social responsibility. We know this has been proven, and even certain institutions that I don't really even trust have come out and said and changed their tune time and time again and said asymptomatic carriers are the least likely to transmit this. So the whole theory that this thing was riding on in the very beginning has been changed so many times, and our economy has been completely assaulted. People's livelihoods completely just turned upside down. And I won't even get started on how preposterous the whole the rioting thing is. And then their whole thing that they're now bringing it back, right? It's like literally just watching a TV channel. It's like, where do I want to put my attention? What's the thing now? Okay, COVID, house lockdown, that's the drama of the day. And then that loses its zest. And then, okay, now let's start up the next thing. So all of our attention is on that. And this is how I see it playing out. And that's why I keep saying all roads lead to November, people. All roads lead to November. Even Donald Trump said, oh, it'll just disappear. It'll be gone. Because he knows, right? He's in a weird position. I know a lot about that guy I did not know before. So not pro-Trump, anti-Trump. I'm just like, look, we need our country back. We need our world back. Like, we need to know who's who and who's on our side. And we can squabble later. And, you know, he's laid that out multiple times in whatever way he can, which tells you, oh, and people are like, oh, he doesn't care about people or anything. It's like, no, dummy, like he's got more intel than anyone, but he's a card player, he's a poker player. Like, he's playing his hand with the media. He's playing with the media. Like, the Donald Trump that spoke at Mount Rushmore was a different Donald Trump than we see playing in the media. So that's how I just, at this point with all of it, I'm just like, look, guys, like, just do you focus on your health, focus on your family, focus on your business, make as much money ethically as you can as possible, get prepared, and, you know, let's see where this goes. That's my shtick on it.
I agree. The political part of this is maddening. And I have friends on both sides. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, one of them,
me too.
One of them, according to Facebook, is watching right now, and he'll be proud of me here. But, you know, obviously 4 years ago, I never thought Donald Trump would win that election. I just didn't.
Right. Yeah.
But the underswelling of people that talk his language got him to where he is. And the issue now is, when he said this in the beginning, way beginning, he said this was a hoax. Obviously, he's kind of come along for the ride a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But in all due respect, it's left versus right. Right states are open, left states are closed.
Yeah.
It's just comical to watch this. And I do believe that things will open properly if Trump wins. Yep. If Biden somehow wins, he's already said all these different kind of things.
That's the definitive truth that I see, and that when you can see as you can and we can, that's what I think that's the glaze over people's eyes. They're like, well, what about this? No, there is no what about this. When you can see clearly, there's two different trains right here. There's the democratic train, which, by the way, the KKK was incepted by the Democratic Party. Do your research, study this stuff. The Republic was brought forth by African Americans. So let's just do a little research here where we are right now and whose agendas and who's prioritizing what. I don't see any other option. There is no other option. That's what I know, and that's what a lot of people and me know. And this is not a political statement. Actually, this is just what it is. There's only one option towards the world that we want, and if the other thing gets put into power, then, you know, I don't know. But here's the thing too, Glenn. I don't think that that's even a possibility. There's been 25 attempted assassinations on Donald Trump's life in his tenure so far. I don't think, you know, nobody knows that, right? But imagine that, right? Just what the heck? How does that, what? Like, that's a president. That's all I can say about it. All I can say, and this isn't about him or anything, it's an energy. It's an energetic that's carrying itself over. Like, this dude takes 1,000 poison arrows every day and just, he's like a buffer. That's how I see it. Like, I think he's the buffer to all the people on the chessboard who are making the real moves, right? And that's a whole other thing, you know, talking about what's really going on behind the scenes and why why is everybody on house arrest? Why is everybody being told to stay in their homes? Why is there this massive push around this fake pandemic? Why is there race wars and all this? It's all diversions to actually distract from the fundamental thing that is being drained, right? Which is, you know, most of us are aware now. If you're not, please look into this. The elephant in the room is human sex trafficking, trafficking of children, and pedophilia rings. That was the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, and now the whole Ghislaine thing's coming out. By the way, I think the Ghislaine thing was prearranged. Just going to say that. Think about it. It's all playing out, and that's I just wanted to share that too, just for anyone that's like really feeling like, the confusion. Right? Like, I don't know what to believe. Look, you got to, for the only where this is coming from for me is not just coming from research. It's coming from feeling my way through this. It's coming from feeling my way through the situation. When I feel into it, I feel exactly what I'm saying. Like, there's only one pathway towards salvation and liberation. And the other option, it's not even factored into that at all, right? I sense darkness and light. That's my thing. Like, I can just tell between a lie and something that's not a lie. And that's how I try to navigate through things.
Yeah. So we're in for an interesting few months.
Yes, sir.
At least. So, but I got to tell you, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for all the information, talking from the heart, talking about your story all the way through. And, just hopefully people who are listening are understanding. And I hear you. There's that box a lot of us close the doors to and pretty much are convinced that we have to stay in there, and learning that the box is never locked. And whatever is better for the body is better for the body.
Safe to leave the box.
Right.
It's safe. That's the thing, like safety. What do people want in their body? What are money issues? Safety. I think I need to make more money. I just really want to feel safe, right? Isn't that what it is? Like, so like the box is just like it's like just the whatever you call it, the training wheels to riding the actual bike. Yeah. But there's nothing as exhilarating and freeing as coasting on the bike uninhibited, right? But you got to let go of the training wheels.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, listen, people want to follow up on what you're doing and what you're up to. What are the best avenues to watch you, to listen to you, to read you, all that stuff?
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Ronnie Landis actually it's under Ronnie Wylde now. That's the me and my partner have taken on a new name. Haven't done all the legal stuff for it yet, but you'll probably look up Ronnie Landis, it'll come up. But Facebook, Instagram are the two places I frequent most. YouTube, I also have my own podcast, High Performance Health. And we're doing a lot of amazing work there. I've had that for about 5 years, hundreds of episodes, going deep into everything and anything. The last 2 interviews were actually with Dr. Gabriel Cousins and David Wolf on all this stuff.
Awesome.
So that's fun. You can just look that up. My website, hhphealth.com. That I'm working on that right now. So just go to social media and you can connect with me or whatever.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, Ronnie, I want to thank you for the time, and we went on long, but it was focused, and I'm sure it's going to keep people's attention, and I know people definitely learned a lot. So thanks, pal.
Yeah, totally. And this was fun. This was one of the funnest interviews, maybe the funnest ever.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah.